The sound of a single gunshot echoed through the quiet Anderson neighborhood on that cold January morning in 2025. Officers responding to a reported break-in rushed toward the bedroom, their hearts pounding with each step. What they discovered would forever haunt them. 18-year-old Shamaya Allen lying motionless, blood pooling around her pregnant body. Her eyes, once full of dreams and ambition, now vacant. Just 2 weeks shy of her 19th birthday, her life had been violently cut short. The call had come from 34-year-old Brian Jackson, who claimed an intruder had entered through a window. But as police secured the scene, the truth began to emerge, a truth far more complex and devastating than a simple home invasion. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was the tragic culmination of a relationship built on manipulation, control, and betrayal. At first glance, Brian and Shamaya appeared to be an unlikely couple, a 34-year-old man and an 18-year-old young mother. Their 16-year age gap raised eyebrows, but few recognized the dangerous power imbalance at play. Brian had methodically inserted himself into Shamaya's life when she was most vulnerable, offering financial stability and promises of a better future for her and her young son. Future. Their joint fitness channel showcased a seemingly perfect relationship, but behind closed doors, Brian wielded absolute control. He isolated her from family, monitored her movements, and used money as a weapon. When Shamaya discovered she was pregnant with his child, she believed it would strengthen their bond. Instead, her world shattered upon learning Brian had simultaneously impregnated another woman. The ultimate betrayal pushed this already volatile situation toward its deadly conclusion. Shamaya, carrying new life within her, would soon lose her own at the hands of the man who claimed to love her. If you're feeling a chill down your spine right now, you should. This story demands your full attention because it could save a life, maybe even your own or someone you love. Stay with me through this entire video. The warning signs we'll uncover together might be happening right in front of you. What makes this case particularly disturbing goes beyond the tragic death of a young mother. In the hours following Shamaya's death, suspicious posts appeared on social media, one allegedly written by Shamaya herself, though investigators would later question its authenticity. Digital breadcrumbs revealed Brian had been carefully crafting an online narrative, deleting and archiving content to paint himself as the victim. The investigation would uncover a calculated pattern of psychological warfare, love bombing followed by crushing withdrawal, financial dependency created through seemingly generous gestures, and the systematic isolation that left Shamaya with nowhere to turn. Most haunting of all was the revelation that multiple people had witnessed warning signs, but didn't know how to intervene effectively. As we examine the final weeks of Shamaya's life, we'll see moments where intervention might have changed everything. Critical junctures, where different choices could have led to a young mother celebrating her 19th birthday instead of being lowered into the ground. Shamaya Allen entered the world on Valentine's Day, 2006, in Anderson, Indiana. A birthday that seemed to reflect the love she would both give and inspire throughout her short life. Born to Danielle Pearson and Tracy Allen, she grew up surrounded by siblings in a blended family that included Mikhail, Ashila, India, Asia, Autumn, Chris, Bryce, and Arnis. Their home was often filled with laughter, occasional chaos, and the deep bonds that form in large families. From an early age, Shamaya displayed a fierce independence and creativity that set her apart. While her childhood wasn't without challenges, the family faced financial struggles common in their community. She approached life with remarkable resilience. Her mother Danielle often marveled at Shamaya's ability to find joy in simple moments and her natural talent for bringing people together. By her early teens, Shamaya had already developed the entrepreneurial spirit that would later define her, selling handmade jewelry to classmates and organizing small community events. Motherhood came early for Shamaya when she gave birth to her son, Future, at 16. While many teenagers might have been overwhelmed, she embraced the role with remarkable maturity and dedication. She would often stay up late studying after putting Future to bed, determined that her son would have opportunities she hadn't. Their bond was extraordinary. She documented their adventure days, exploring parks and museums, prioritizing experiences over material things they couldn't afford. Despite the challenges of young motherhood, Shamaya never used it as an excuse to abandon her own dreams. Instead, she incorporated future into her vision for the future, creating vision boards that included both her goals and hopes for her son. Her social media was filled with proud moments, Future's first steps, his early attempts at drawing, the matching outfits she crafted for them. Being his mom made me stronger, she once wrote. Everything I do now has purpose because he's watching. Art had always been Shamaya's refuge, and she discovered her calling when she first picked up a tattoo machine at 17. Working initially as an apprentice at DSA, a local tattoo studio, she quickly demonstrated natural talent that impressed even veteran artists. Her distinctive style blended delicate line work with bold color choices, and clients soon began requesting her specifically. She meticulously documented her progress, creating portfolios of her designs and practicing endlessly to perfect her technique. Shamaya dreamed of opening her own female-centered tattoo studio, a safe space where women could feel comfortable expressing themselves through body art. She had already begun saving, working extra shifts at Olive Garden while building her tattoo clientele. Her sketchbooks revealed ambitious business plans, detailed budgets, location scouting notes, and marketing ideas. "I want to create art that helps people heal," she told a friend. Her tattoo designs often incorporated elements of growth and transformation, reflecting her belief that art could be both beautiful and meaningful. Those who knew Shamaya described her as a force of nature, fiercely loyal, quick to laugh, and endlessly generous. She'd give you her last dollar if you needed it, her sister Shyla recalled. Friends remembered her ability to sense when something was wrong, often showing up unannounced with comfort food and a listening ear. Her mother spoke of Shamaya's protective nature, especially toward her younger siblings, whom she helped with homework and defended fiercely from bullies. Even acquaintances noted her infectious enthusiasm and the way she made everyone feel important. "She had this gift," a former teacher said, "of making you believe in yourself just by believing in you." By 18, Shamaya had mapped out a 5-year plan that seemed entirely within reach. A growing tattoo clientele, savings for her studio, and plans to enroll in business courses at the local community college. With her talent, determination, and the unwavering support of her family, her future burned bright with possibility. Despite his claims of business success, Brian's financial situation was largely smoke and mirrors. He lived primarily off investments from partners who were gradually cut out of ventures once they'd served their purpose. His charm and confidence masked a calculated predator who identified vulnerability with frightening precision. Brian first encountered Shamaya at Olive Garden, where she waited tables. He requested her section 3 times in 1 week, leaving extravagant tips that caught her attention. Their initial conversation seemed innocent. He expressed interest in her tattoo designs and offered business advice. For an 18-year-old single mother struggling to make ends meet, his attention felt validating, even flattering. The grooming began subtly. He offered to feature her tattoo work on his influential social media. This evolved into invitations to exclusive networking events where he introduced her as his protege. Soon came gifts for future, educational toys that every developing child needs, creating a sense of obligation. When her car broke down, he provided rides to work, gradually controlling her schedule. He positioned himself as a mentor, someone who saw her true potential, unlike others in her life. Within 2 months, he had identified her insecurities and dreams, crafting himself into the perfect solution for both. By the time he suggested she move into his apartment to save money, she already trusted him implicitly. The 16-year age gap between Brian and Shamaya created a fundamental power imbalance that he expertly exploited. While she was navigating early adulthood and motherhood simultaneously, he had decades of life experience to draw from. He leveraged his financial stability against her economic vulnerability, his established business connections against her fledgling career aspirations. When disagreements arose, he weaponized maturity. "You're being childish," or "This is why dating someone your age would be easier." He positioned himself as both teacher and savior, creating a dynamic where she constantly sought his approval. Friends noticed Shamaya adopting his opinions, speech patterns, and even his taste in music, subtle signs of his overwhelming influence on her developing identity. The couple's joint fitness channel, Fit with Brimia, launched 6 months into their relationship, quickly gaining followers drawn to their apparent chemistry and transformation stories. On camera, they portrayed the perfect partnership. Brian, the knowledgeable coach, Shamaya, the dedicated student flourishing under his guidance. Their content featured workout routines, meal prep sessions, and motivational talks about overcoming obstacles together. Behind this carefully curated image, a different reality played out. Unposted footage recovered from Shamaya's phone revealed Brian criticizing her form, weight, and eating habits when camera stopped rolling. Text messages showed him scheduling her workouts at times that conflicted with family events, gradually isolating her. While online comments praised their relationship goals, Shamaya's private journal entries described walking on eggshells to avoid his disapproval. The fitness channel served a dual purpose, generating income that Brian controlled while creating a public image so convincing that even Shamaya's closest friends couldn't see through it. The warning signs were there, scattered like puzzle pieces that no one connected. Shamaya's sudden withdrawal from family gatherings coincided with Brian's claims that they were focusing on business growth. Her once vibrant social media became exclusively fitness content, her personal voice replaced by captions that echoed Brian's motivational speaking style. Friends noticed she always checked her phone when Brian messaged, responding immediately regardless of the situation. Her mother observed that Shamaya seemed to need permission for basic decisions. When she missed her sister's birthday celebration because Brian had scheduled a surprise business meeting, family members expressed concern, but Shamaya defended him, insisting they didn't understand his vision for their future. Brian's psychological manipulation of Shamaya operated like a masterclass in coercive control. He employed love bombing, overwhelming her with affection, compliments, and grand gestures that made her feel special beyond measure. These periods of intense adoration would abruptly shift to cold withdrawal when she failed to meet his expectations, creating an addictive cycle where she constantly worked to regain his approval. Gaslighting became his primary weapon, making Shamaya question her own perceptions. When she expressed discomfort with his controlling behavior, he'd insist she was too sensitive or misremembering events. He strategically created no-win situations, criticizing her for spending too much time with Future, then accusing her of being a neglectful mother when she focused on their business. Text messages recovered from her phone revealed his mastery of emotional manipulation. "No one will ever understand you like I do, and I'm just trying to protect you from making the same mistakes I see other girls your age making." Financial control formed the foundation of Brian's power over Shamaya. Initially, his financial support appeared generous, covering her rent, buying groceries, and providing gifts for Future. But this generosity came with invisible strings that gradually tightened around her independence. He convinced Shamaya to close her personal bank account and open a joint account that he primarily managed for tax purposes related to their fitness channel. When she earned money from tattoo clients, Brian insisted she deposit it into their shared account for business reinvestment. Her paychecks from Olive Garden followed the same path. He established an allowance system, requiring her to justify personal expenses while he made unilateral decisions about larger purchases. When she questioned this arrangement, he reminded her of all he'd invested in her career. By mid-2024, Shamaya had no independent financial resources. Even her car was registered in his name, meaning she couldn't leave without essentially starting from zero, a reality Brian subtly reinforced whenever conflicts arose. Social media became Brian's most effective tool for monitoring and controlling Shamaya. What began as helping with her personal brand evolved into complete oversight of her digital presence. He insisted they share passwords to manage their business accounts efficiently, giving him access to her private messages. Their joint fitness account portrayed a perfect relationship that Shamaya felt pressured to maintain. Brian would photograph and approve her outfits before she posted, delete comments from male followers, and script her responses to fans. He reviewed her location data under the guise of coordinating schedules. Most insidiously, he used their public image to silence her private complaints. "We can't let our followers see us fighting," became a powerful way to suppress conflict and maintain his control. Shamaya's isolation happened so gradually that neither she nor her loved ones recognized it until she was effectively cut off. Brian initially charmed her family, attending gatherings and presenting himself as supportive. Over time, he began scheduling unmissable business opportunities that conflicted with family events. When Shamaya's sister expressed concern about her absence, Brian suggested she was jealous of their success. He subtly criticized her friends, questioning their motives or highlighting their negative influence on her goals. Phone calls with her mother grew shorter and less frequent. By autumn 2024, Shamaya's world had shrunk to Brian, their business, and her son. Her once vibrant support network had been systematically dismantled, leaving her with no outside perspective on the increasingly controlling relationship. Are you seeing the warning signs? Could someone you know be experiencing this invisible prison of control? Take a moment to think about relationships in your life, yours or someone close to you. Has their behavior changed? Have they withdrawn? These questions aren't just rhetorical. Recognizing these patterns could literally save lives. Dr. Amara Wilson, a specialist in domestic abuse and coercive control, explains that cases like Shamaya's represent the most dangerous form of abuse. What makes coercive control so insidious is its invisibility, she notes. There may be no bruises, but the psychological damage is profound and often more lasting than physical violence. Research shows that victims in age-gap relationships with financial dependency are at significantly higher risk. The victim often doesn't recognize their situation as abuse because it doesn't match what they've been taught abuse looks like. Dr. Wilson adds, by the time they realize the danger, they've been systematically cut off from resources and support that could help them escape. This isolation is not accidental, it's strategic. On December 3, 2024, Shamaya returned home early from a tattoo appointment that had been unexpectedly canceled. What she discovered would shatter the already fragile foundation of her relationship. Walking into their bedroom, she found Brian with another woman, not just any woman, but 22-year-old Kendra Mills, a regular commenter on their fitness videos, whom Brian had previously dismissed as just a fan. Neighbors reported hearing screaming that afternoon as Shamaya confronted them both. In the chaos that followed, Brian attempted to frame the situation as a misunderstanding, claiming Kendra was there for a private fitness consultation. But text messages on his unlocked phone, which Shamaya grabbed during the confrontation, told a different story, revealing an ongoing 6-month relationship conducted primarily while Shamaya was working at Olive Garden. The messages contained intimate photos, plans for future meetings, and perhaps most devastating, Brian's complaints about Shamaya to this other woman. The discovery of Brian's infidelity was only the beginning of Shamaya's nightmare. 1 week after the confrontation, she learned she was pregnant with Brian's child. Her initial joy quickly turned to anguish when, during a heated argument about his relationship with Kendra, Brian revealed that Kendra was also carrying his child and was already 4 months along. This devastating revelation meant Brian had been involved with both women simultaneously for months, conceiving children with both. According to Shamaya's journal entries from this period, Brian's response to her pregnancy announcement had been suspiciously muted compared to his excitement about her previous pregnancy scare. Now she understood why. Text messages to her best friend revealed her turmoil. He's been planning a life with her while building one with me. I feel like I'm living in some twisted alternate reality. The betrayal was compounded by Brian's suggestion that they could work something out where both women and children could be part of his life, a proposition that Shamaya found deeply humiliating. The weeks following these revelations saw a dangerous escalation in domestic incidents. Police were called to their residence 4 times between December 10th and January 15th. The first call came from a neighbor who reported hearing objects breaking and a woman screaming. When officers arrived, both Brian and Shamaya downplayed the incident as moving furniture despite visible damage to the walls. 3 days before Christmas, officers responded again when Brian reported Shamaya acting erratically. Body camera footage showed a distraught Shamaya claiming Brian had locked her out of their shared business accounts. The third incident occurred on New Year's Eve when Shamaya called police after Brian threatened to have her removed from their apartment, which was in his name only. The final call, just 2 weeks before the fatal shooting, documented Brian claiming Shamaya had threatened him. Each interaction with law enforcement revealed a relationship spiraling dangerously out of control, with officers noting the increasingly hostile dynamic, but lacking grounds for intervention beyond temporary separation. Alarmed by the escalating situation, Shamaya's family made desperate attempts to intervene. Her mother, Danielle, reached out to Brian directly, pleading with him to end the relationship cleanly rather than continuing the psychological torment. Her brother Mikhail offered Shamaya his spare room, even driving to the apartment to help her pack, only to have Brian convince Shamaya to stay during the brief time it took Mikhail to get coffee. Shamaya's sister, Ashila, contacted a domestic violence advocate who attempted to connect with Shamaya, but Brian intercepted the calls. The family even organized an intervention in early January, but Shamaya never showed up, later texting that she and Brian were working things out, messages her family believes Brian dictated. As January progressed, Shamaya's mental state deteriorated rapidly. Her tattoo clients noticed her hands trembling during appointments. Co-workers at Olive Garden reported she would take phone calls from Brian in the walk-in freezer, emerging with red eyes. Her journal entries became increasingly frantic and disjointed, filled with questions about her worth and future. In her final week, Shamaya withdrew the last $73 from an account Brian didn't know about and purchased a small handgun from an acquaintance, a desperate act from someone who felt cornered. Her last text to her mother read simply, "I need to protect myself and my babies. No one else will." The message, sent at 2:17 a.m. on January 29th, would be her final communication with family. January 29th, 2025 began as an unseasonably cold Wednesday in Anderson. Security footage from neighboring buildings pieced together Shamaya's final hours. At 5:43 a.m., cameras captured her dropping Future off at her mother's house, an unusual time that suggested premeditation. By 6:15, she had parked her car 3 blocks from Brian's apartment, walking the remaining distance with her hood pulled up against both the cold and potential recognition. Phone records show Brian was awake, exchanging text messages with Kendra about a doctor's appointment scheduled for that morning. At 6:32, Shamaya attempted to call Brian twice, but he declined both calls. Neighbors reported hearing a brief argument outside around 6:40, though no one looked out their windows. The apartment complex's security camera caught a final glimpse of Shamaya alive at 6:47, pacing near the side of the building where Brian's bedroom window was located, visibly distressed and repeatedly checking her phone. According to Brian's statement to police, he was showering when he heard glass breaking in his bedroom around 7 a.m. He claimed he grabbed his phone and locked himself in the bathroom, calling 911 to report a break-in. The dispatcher recorded him whispering that his ex-girlfriend had entered through the window and might be armed. What Brian didn't mention in this call was that Shamaya was 8 weeks pregnant with his child. Forensic evidence later confirmed that Shamaya had indeed entered through the bedroom window, leaving behind a small pry bar used to force it open. Once inside, she apparently confronted Brian as he exited the bathroom. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices, a woman shouting about betrayal and lies, and a man repeatedly saying, "You need to leave." Text messages recovered from Shamaya's phone revealed she had written to Brian that morning, "I know she's there. I'm coming over. We need to talk about both your children. You can't just pretend I don't exist." Police arrived at 7:12 a.m., responding to Brian's call about an armed intruder. Officers James Mercer and Tanya Washington approached the apartment with caution, announcing their presence at the door. Brian let them in, immediately pointing toward the bedroom and whispering that Shamaya was inside and possibly armed. As the officers moved toward the bedroom, instructing Shamaya to come out with her hands visible, a single gunshot rang out. The officers rushed in to find Shamaya on the floor with a fatal gunshot wound to her chest. Her legally purchased handgun was in her hand, but the angle of the wound raised immediate questions. Officer Washington began CPR, while Officer Mercer secured Brian in the living room. Paramedics pronounced Shamaya dead at 7:27 a.m. Both she and her unborn child were lost. The apartment was immediately secured as a crime scene, with investigators noting several concerning details. Despite Brian's claim of being in the shower when Shamaya broke in, the bathroom was completely dry. A half-packed suitcase sat open in the closet, containing men's clothing and essential documents. Most troubling was the discovery of Kendra hiding in a hall closet, directly contradicting Brian's initial statement that he was alone. Within hours, both Brian and Kendra were taken to the station for questioning. Meanwhile, the devastating task fell to Officer Washington to notify Danielle Pearson that her daughter, just days from turning 19, would never come home again. Within hours of Shamaya's death, 2 lengthy posts appeared online that immediately raised suspicions. The first, posted to Shamaya's personal account at 9:43 a.m., over 2 hours after she had been pronounced dead, read as a suicide note, claiming she couldn't handle the rejection and was sorry for everything. The second post came from Brian's account, expressing shock and heartbreak over her decision to end her life. Digital forensics would later confirm both posts were written from the same device, Brian's personal laptop, while he was supposedly being interviewed by police. These posts represented just the tip of a much larger campaign of digital manipulation. Brian had been methodically crafting an online narrative for months. Investigators discovered he had created a folder of screenshots showing only Shamaya's most emotional messages, while deleting his provocative responses. He had edited their fitness videos to remove segments where he criticized or belittled her. Most disturbing was a draft email to Shamaya's family, dated 3 weeks before her death, in which he expressed concerns about her mental stability, seemingly laying groundwork for a narrative he would later deploy. The digital trail revealed Brian had researched self-defense against pregnant ex and Indiana Stand Your Ground law in the weeks before the shooting. His careful curation of their online presence had served a dual purpose, controlling Shamaya while alive and creating a narrative to protect himself after her death. The investigation took a decisive turn when ballistics results contradicted Brian's claim that Shamaya had shot herself. The angle and powder residue patterns were inconsistent with self-infliction. On February 15, 2025, what would have been Shamaya's 19th birthday, Brian Jackson was formally charged with second-degree murder and feticide. Kendra Mills faced charges of obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact for her role in providing false statements to investigators. Brian's defense team immediately began leveraging the carefully constructed digital narrative, releasing selected text messages and video clips to portray Shamaya as unstable and threatening. The prosecution countered with the complete message threads, revealing Brian's manipulation and provocation. As the case moves toward trial, scheduled for September 2025, legal experts predict the digital evidence will be central to both prosecution and defense strategies. The community's response to Shamaya's death was immediate and powerful. Hundreds attended her funeral, many wearing purple ribbons symbolizing domestic violence awareness. Her tattoo clients organized a memorial art show featuring designs she had created, raising over $15,000 for future education. Local domestic violence organizations reported a 40% increase in calls following media coverage of her story, with many callers specifically citing Shamaya's case as their reason for seeking help. Anderson High School established the Shamaya Allen Scholarship for young parents pursuing artistic careers, ensuring her creative legacy would continue. Perhaps most impactfully, the Anderson Police Department implemented new training protocols for officers responding to domestic disputes, with specific focus on recognizing psychological abuse and coercive control, changes that might help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Shamaya's tragic story illuminates several critical red flags that everyone should recognize in relationships. Extreme jealousy masked as protection is often the first warning sign when someone monitors your communications or questions your interactions with others under the guise of caring. Isolation happens gradually. An abuser systematically limits your contact with friends and family, often creating conflicts that make maintaining these relationships difficult. Financial control establishes dependency, whether through generously paying for everything or insisting on managing shared finances. Age gaps, particularly with young adults under 25, can create inherent power imbalances that make manipulation easier. Watch for love bombing, overwhelming affection and attention that suddenly switches to coldness when you don't meet expectations. Perhaps most telling is when someone consistently makes you question your own perceptions and memories, making you feel crazy for raising concerns. If your personality seems to be fading, if you're walking on eggshells to avoid conflict, or if you find yourself making excuses for your partner's behavior to others, these are urgent warnings that should never be ignored. For those recognizing these patterns in their own relationships or those of loved ones, resources exist that can provide crucial support. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, operates 24 hours daily, offering confidential support, safety planning, and local referrals. Many communities have emergency shelters that provide temporary housing, legal advocacy, and counseling services. The Love is Respect website and hotline specifically addresses dating abuse among young people. Financial assistance programs can help overcome economic barriers to leaving, while legal aid organizations offer guidance on protective orders and custody issues. Remember that the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when attempting to leave. Having a safety plan developed with professional guidance is essential. Document concerning behavior when safe to do so, and consider telling trusted friends or family about your situation. No one should face these circumstances alone, and reaching out is not a sign of weakness, but of tremendous courage. Shamaya's legacy extends far beyond the tragic circumstances of her death. In the years since her passing, her story has inspired concrete change. The Shamaya Allen Act, currently moving through the Indiana State Legislature, would strengthen protections for victims of psychological abuse and coercive control, recognizing these as serious forms of domestic violence even in the absence of physical harm. Her artwork lives on through the memorial tattoo flash sheets created from her designs, with proceeds benefiting young single parents. Perhaps most powerfully, Future, now being raised by Shamaya's mother, will grow up surrounded by stories of his mother's creativity, resilience, and love. A community garden planted in her honor features a mural of mother and son, alongside the words from her journal. To create something beautiful that outlasts you, that's the truest form of immortality. Through policy change, artistic legacy, and the lives she touched, Shamaya continues to make her mark on the world that lost her far too soon. If this story moved you, if it sent shivers down your spine, or made you think differently about relationships, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Explosive True Crime Stories. Your engagement helps these crucial stories reach more people who might need to hear them. Share this video with someone who might benefit from understanding these warning signs. You never know whose life you might save. Comment below if you've ever noticed these red flags in relationships around you, or share resources that have helped you or someone you know. Every conversation we start chips away at the silence that allows abuse to continue. And remember, if you're experiencing any of the warning signs we've discussed, you deserve support. You deserve safety. And despite what an abuser might have told you, you absolutely deserve better.